The disrespect for the Minnesota Vikings continues. And again, Kirk Cousins in the crosshairs. We'll talk about that right after this. As we continue on through the offseason, as every year, we always like to point out the national media and taking shots at our Minnesota Vikings. They love to do it. The Vikings are kind of a team that everybody loves to hate on. And at some points gets a little bit ridiculous, right? Like I know obviously a couple weeks ago we talked about the Justin Jefferson thing with Pat McAfee as well as Keyshawn Johnson. It's, and that we already gave our thoughts on that. But this is about the man who takes a lot of flack. It takes a lot of flack for this team, and that is the quarterback Kirk Cousins, of course. It is what it is. We all, as we both know, everybody in the fan base has their thoughts on Kirk Cousins, their thoughts, their opinions. Both sides, you can find arguments to support it. But sometimes I feel like the guy just takes strays from nowhere. Like the dude's literally just minding his own business. His name gets brought up, and then everybody just starts laying on him, unfortunately. And of course, another ESPN outlet has to just bring up the fact and kind of poo-poo on him just a little bit. But of course, that's just what ESPN does best, is they just take the narratives and they roll with it. And I don't know. I think what they said is ridiculous. We'll get into a little bit more here, but what are your thoughts on the whole Kirk Cousins disrespect?
Yeah. So you're talking about the Vikings disrespect, Kirk Cousins in the crosshairs. So the Vikings are just a team that gets disrespected for whatever reasons, but Kirk Cousins, like whether on the Vikings or not, he's just that guy who's going to get that kind of treatment regardless. So now he's just Kirk Cousins on the Vikings. So it's like a double whammy for him. And, anybody who watches us regularly knows, like, I'm not the biggest Kirk Cousins guy. I think he's a good player. I definitely think he's a good player, 100% above average player. I 100% think he's the best quarterback in our division and probably the second or third best in the entire NFC. But like I'm still not convinced he can win the big game, whatever. But the disrespect for him is just insane. It's super insane. It's way out there. I think even the biggest Kirk Viking fan hater has to see, like, all right, press the brakes a little bit on this guy, because they're digging deep in everything they can possibly get. For instance, and we have some examples of this that we're going to dive into in a little bit here. But one thing that I've been seeing a lot lately, obviously it's off season, everybody's doing their tier lists. We're doing tier lists, but everybody's making these tier lists of quarterbacks. And on these lists, every single time Kirk Cousins comes up, he's usually sitting around like the 13th best quarterback or 14th, but he gets his own tier list every time. That's just called Kirk Cousins. It's like guys like Kirk Cousins, which we'll talk about, but Jared Goff is usually on that list. And then after that, it's just like Kirk Cousins, boom, just his name by himself. He's never with any other player or whatever. It's just like you're poking at him specifically, which, is kind of funny. I'm sure he probably doesn't care. Like Casey said, he's just going around doing his own thing. But that's what's so funny about it. For a guy that like is so low key, people just like to beg. I think that's the reason why. It's like the Van thing. It's the, he's the prototypical like dad type of guy, and
who's just making all this money.
Dweebish. Yeah, making all this money. Dweebish feeling, and people are picking on him for it. Like literally picking on him for it.
Absolutely.
So it's funny. Obviously, I'm not a huge Kirk guy, but I think the all the hate I think is definitely ridiculous. It'll be interesting to see. That's what's one really exciting thing though about this. Actually, tomorrow Wednesday, when the Netflix series Quarterbacks comes out, and he's one of the main. If what I'm hearing, he's the star of the entire series. It'll be interesting to see what happens after that. If people will gain a different respect, kind of similar to the way what happened with him after the Kirk Chain stuff started. When the Kirk Chain stuff started happening, nobody was really talking shit. He was on top of the world after that. So it'll be interesting to see how this affects people's opinions about him. But so I'm excited for that. So that's Wednesday. Right. We're not sponsored by Netflix or anything, but I'm pumped to see it.
Yeah. But anyway,
we should be though if Netflix is watching.
What brought this idea on, as I mentioned, First Take, Get Up on ESPN, was they brought up this question, right? So Courtney Cronin on the show, she spent a lot of years covering the Vikings for ESPN. Now she's the beat writer for the Chicago Bears. They also had Sam Acho, Harry Douglas, and Brian Kuster. So basically the question they were presented with, like, if you needed an NFC North quarterback to win one game, which one are you picking? So, okay, with Kirk Cousins, let's look at the facts, right? The only time he's ever had to worry about one game is in the playoffs, right? Because it's win or go home when you get to the playoffs. His playoff record, as we all know, is not great. He's only got one playoff win in his career. So I understand it from that perspective, but nobody on this panel mentioned the playoffs when it came to Kirk Cousins. I was expecting 4th and 8 to come up multiple times, and it did not. So the playoffs were not brought up. It's just who could win you one game. Who are you taking to win that one game? So the two guys in the middle. And this is where I want to start here because this is just the most ridiculous take. Sam Acho and Harry Douglas chose Justin Fields. Their rationale was he brings something to the game that other teams, so if it's just one game, he brings something to the game that other teams don't know how to deal with, and that's the fact that he can run the ball. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Courtney Cronin just said, if you're looking at potential, then sure. But you're not. You're saying one game right now. Who are you taking? I wouldn't touch Justin Fields. As Jamie said before, the guy's won.
Yeah.
He won 3 games. He won 3 games last year. This team.
Yeah, I'm taking the guy who won 3 games last year.
Right. And last
I'm taking him instead of the guy who won 13 last year. And you can say, like, some people say we are like the worst 13 winning team ever, but you could say that's even more. And we've won 10 of those games by 1 point. You could say that's even more impressive by Kirk Cousins. It makes him more able to win close games, to win games overall.
And he had to. He had how many fourth quarter comebacks, and he led those, right? That's the thing. If any other quarterback leads those, it's, oh my God, but it's Kirk Cousins. It's like, yeah, but they got lucky and this happened and that happened. No. And we'll talk about lucky when we get to Jared Goff, okay? But anyway, so the fact that some people took Justin Fields shows me why you're on ESPN, because you're brainless. Sorry, Sam Acho, Harry Douglas, if you guys end up watching this.
And I'm surprised you still have your jobs.
Yeah, Keyshawn Johnson fucked around and found out. So pardon the language.
I mean, it's Justin Jefferson. You don't mess with Justin Jefferson.
But either way, though,
that's just facts.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, last year, 192 of 318, 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 2,200 yards. Like, cool. That's the guy you're going to pick. I know the running and stuff fantasy-wise. If you're asking me to win one fantasy game, absolutely I'm taking Justin Fields. But one game in the league, nah. I'm sorry. I don't care what he can do. They're asking right now, who are you taking? I ain't taking Justin Fields. I'm sorry. Not yet. Not now.
Yeah. I'm not taking him on his potential. Like, potential maybe like a few years down the road potential.
Right.
Like Kirk Cousins, I mean, he showed last year, like, he's a winner. Like, he's won games. He's a guy who I don't think he has lost as many games. Like, you can say whatever you want about Justin Fields doesn't have players around him, whatever. But I don't think Kirk Cousins has ever had a season where he only had 3 wins in his entire career.
Right.
If anything, he's just known as like an 8-8 guy who, as a Viking, these last couple years anyways, well, yeah, last year for sure. He's shown that he can win these games.
Right. But it's just, I don't know. Justin Fields, he hasn't done anything right now. And this is a guy who the Bears are basically saying, like, figure it out or you're done. Like, they brought in DJ Moore for him. It's like, here's what you have it all now. And if you suck again and we end up with the first overall pick, you're out. Williams is in. So I don't know. I think that's a pretty bad take that you would take Justin Fields. Goff, you could argue, right? Because at the end of last season, when they needed him to win, when the playoffs were still in their grasp, he did. I believe they mentioned he went like 15 touchdowns and no interceptions. They brought up, though, winning the one game against the Packers. That game meant nothing. I mean, cool. I loved that win for them. And I love the fact they knocked the Packers out of the playoffs, and that was awesome. And maybe that's what they were playing for at the end of the day. Dan Campbell, I think he's a good coach. We'll see how he coaches with expectation. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. But like, they really weren't playing for anything in that last game of the season, right? Like, there was nothing really to play for except for their personal pride, which is cool that they played that well. But their main argument is the two that picked Jared Goff. They said, let's talk about the guy that's been to the big game. He's been to the Super Bowl. He's won playoff games. Let's look, right? So that season, went and clipped out his stats from that year, right? So the divisional round against Dallas, 15 to 28, 186, no touchdowns. no interceptions, right? Cool. NFC Championship game, 25 of 40, 297, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Decent stats, right? But remember, he does not make
62.5.
He does not make the big game, the Super Bowl that they so talked about. He does not make that if the refs do their jobs. And I loved watching that play because F the Saints forever, because they deserved everything that happened to them with the streak of the Minneapolis Miracle, and then Kyle Rudolph catching that touchdown against them. Like, they deserved all of that, but he doesn't even make the Super Bowl if that doesn't happen. And then he gets to the Super Bowl where he goes 19 of 38, 229, no touchdowns, and 1 interception. So this right here, this is you're going to bring up he's made it to the big game, and this is what you're going to look at when you say that. Courtney Cronin, you're better. You're better than this. You're better than that an argument. You're better than that.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
To me, for most of his career, he's had very game manager type vibes. Same with Kirk Cousins. I would say with Kirk Cousins, I call Kirk Cousins a high-end game manager. You could probably say something similar to Jared Goff, but I would put Jared Goff at least a little bit below Kirk Cousins in that category. Yeah, he's made it to the Super Bowl, but like you said, like he was carried by his team 2 years later.
And Sean McVay.
The Rams win the Super Bowl with that squad.
Right.
With Sean McVay, yeah. So you're talking about an extremely talented squad that somehow made it to the Super Bowl when their quarterback was pretty much ineffective throughout the entire playoffs.
And the next year, I'm pretty sure McVay wanted him gone. Remember, they started Wolford in the playoffs. They said Goff was hurt, but people said no. They just basically benched Jared Goff.
Yeah, I knew there's
5 Wolford. Like, who? Come on now. But again, I'll give him props for how he played in Detroit. I like Jared Goff. I think he's solid. Do I think he's lived up to the number 1 overall pick? No, because number 1 overall picks who live up to the hype don't get traded. They don't get cut, and he was traded. So we'll see this year. I mean, the hype. I mean, it's all on him. But to pick him to be the guy because of I don't know. I don't agree with it. And then the stray bullet comes, right? Because one of the guys brings up. So I remember a couple days ago we're talking about Kirk Cousins being the second best quarterback in the NFC. Why isn't he here? And then here come the bullets. The first guy says, well, Kirk Cousins isn't a needle mover. He's not going to move the needle. I'm out on him. I like Justin Fields. The other guy said, yeah, Kirk Cousins, he just kind of is what he is. He doesn't move around a lot. Justin Fields has the other element. That's why I did that. Courtney Cronin says he's reached his ceiling. He doesn't have what it takes to win the big game. And then the last guy said something along the lines of, that's why I thought you guys were all crazy when you were talking about him being the second best quarterback in the NFC. Then they all started yelling, you like that, because nobody picked him. I'm like, okay, mocking the thing that made him kind of famous here, all for no reason, just to take a straight shot at Kirk Cousins. I don't know. I watched that clip, and I was in the boat too. I was okay if we drafted a quarterback. I think we should draft a quarterback. I think we need a succession plan behind Kirk Cousins. But still, hearing that type of stuff just makes me mad because it just doesn't make any sense. Like, he gets so much hate, and it's just like these stray shots at the end didn't need to happen. They could have just said, oh yeah, like we just don't, like, I don't know, I'm just not into him. I like these younger guys better. And Jared Goff is still young. He's 28 years old. And obviously Justin Fields is 24. So it's like, I see their points from an age perspective, like Jared Goff. And Courtney Cronin made a great point. She said Jared Goff could still, like, we don't know what he's going to be in this offense yet. He had 1 season in it. So there's still some unknown there, where Kirk Cousins, every offense he's been in, we all kind of see how he plays, right? So I 100% understand that point. But to completely just discredit what he did this year and want to take a guy who was on a team that missed the playoffs. They started 1-7. Sure, he played great at the end, but like, still, you were 1-7, and a guy who had 3 wins all season long. So to pick those two over Kirk Cousins when Kirk Cousins had how many comeback wins this last year? And the fact, had they mentioned Kirk's play in the playoffs, I might have listened to them. Because how many great games Kirk Cousins had in the playoffs? I would say 1. He had the game against the Saints where he was.
Well, he had the
lights out.
Saints. Yeah.
And then against the Giants.
Otherwise, he's only played.
Against the Giants, I know you can't fully take 4th and 8 out, but not weighing that as much because the defense was so ass in that game. And Kirk Cousins played well enough for us to win. So to not even bring up playoffs, where I could have listened to that argument, it's just
first off, but you're talking about a guy, Justin Fields, who hasn't even only 2 years. It's fair. He could. Who knows what he can become? Doesn't even came close to playoffs. Jared Goff, like we already just looked at his playoff stats. He, like you said, he's pretty much benched the year before getting traded to the Lions in the playoffs. So you're talking about like these guys aren't considered winners at all either so far. We'll see with Justin Fields what happens with him. It is way too early for him. But as far as Jared Goff goes right now, there's no reason saying that he's a winner at all, in my opinion. We haven't seen anything from him, even a playoff standpoint. I mean, yeah, it's Super Bowl, looked at the stats. It was definitely not because of him. I think Kirk Cousins more than capable of doing what Jared Goff did with that Rams team. But again, do I think for sure Kirk Cousins makes it to the Super Bowl and is the guy that wins it? I'm not convinced by that. Definitely not convinced by Jared Goff yet either. But you were bringing up the comebacks, and I'm pretty sure a stat I've seen, I think it was SK actually. I think he tweeted it on this exact post, but I think he had Jared Goff and Justin Fields between them both. They had 4 comebacks last season, and Kirk Cousins had 8 by himself. And you're talking, all the playoff stuff doesn't even matter because we're talking about single games. We're talking about just said who do you want on your team if it's one game, and there's no question, especially if it's any game. I mean, it could be afternoon or noon games on Sundays for all you know. And if that's the case, you know who you got to go with. And like someone's potential, I get it. I agree with them when they say, we know what Kirk Cousins is. We know what does that have to do with winning one game? It does nothing.
Right.
So they kind of went off on that. I don't know. Yeah, it's almost like you just want to go after Kirk Cousins, Which
I think is just kind of the thing. That's just how the Vikings and Kirk Cousins, they're both just.
I feel bad for him. I'm not a huge Kirk Cousins guy, but at some point you got to be like, all right, just leave this guy alone.
Right, exactly.
Leave him alone. You didn't do nothing. Leave him alone. Leave Kirk Cousins alone.
The dude's literally smiling.
I don't know. They just
another.
He's a good guy.
It's just another ESPN take that. I don't know. They're going for headlines in the offseason. It kind of is what it is. Maybe we're overreacting. Let us know if we are down in the comment section. Which of these quarterbacks would you take? Did you find this somewhat disrespectful? Let us know all those thoughts down in the comment section. And we'll see you guys next time on the GG Sports Podcast.
Skol Vikings.